For most of the galaxy, Earth was a forgotten world. Old records spoke of humans as fierce fighters, unpredictable and dangerous, but those stories had faded into legend. Some believed Earth had been destroyed during the last great wars. Others thought the humans had scattered, broken and weak, never to return. The truth was far more dangerous. Earth had never been destroyed. Humanity had chosen to disappear. It had chosen silence. On the surface, Earth looked ordinary. Nations lived in peace, cities grew slowly, and technology was carefully balanced. There were no starships in the skies, no weapons in orbit, no sign that Earth was part of the greater galaxy. People lived simple lives, believing they were safe. But under the oceans, inside the mountains, and deep beneath the ground, a hidden world existed. Massive hangars stretched for miles, holding ships larger than cities. Their black hulls gleamed under artificial lights, weapons locked away but ready. Factories buried under deserts built engines that had never seen daylight. Generations had worked in silence, creating a force that no one outside Earth could even imagine. The cry for help had reached not only the machines but also the keepers of the secret. These were men and women who had dedicated their entire lives to the great silence. They trained soldiers in underground academies, built fleets in secret docks, and kept the truth from the surface world. To them, the cry was not just a signal. It was a spark. The spark that could burn the silence away. In a chamber deep below the Himalayas, the High Command gathered. 12 figures sat around a circular table, their faces lined with years of waiting. Some had been frozen and awakened only recently. Others were descendants of the original commanders, sworn to continue the mission. The hologram of the alien message played again, the desperate voice calling through static. When it ended, the silence in the chamber was heavier than stone. One commander, a woman with gray eyes sharp as blades, leaned forward. If we answer this cry, the galaxy will know we are alive. Every enemy will turn to us again. Another commander, younger but no less firm, spoke in return. And if we do not answer, then what was the point of our silence? Did we build this fleet only to watch and hide forever? The debate grew fierce. Some argued that humanity had suffered too much in the past wars. The galaxy had feared them, hunted them, and almost destroyed them. Why risk it all again? But others remembered why the silence began. It was not because Earth had lost. It was because Earth had chosen. The galaxy had become too dangerous, too filled with enemies waiting for weakness. So Earth had disappeared, not in defeat but in preparation. They had buried themselves deep, watching, waiting, and building. Far above, the surface world carried on in ignorance. Farmers planted crops, children played games, students studied history that never told them the full truth. They believed humanity had once dreamed of the stars but had turned away. Only a few whispers of the old wars remained, stories told as legends. No one knew that beneath their feet, the greatest fleet in the history of mankind was waiting to rise. The fleet had a name spoken only in the hidden halls, the deadliest war fleet. It was not just one armada but many, scattered across the solar system in places no alien eye could find. Some ships were hidden under the seas, their hulls blending with ocean depths. Others rested in the hollowed cores of asteroids, disguised as lifeless rocks. There were even ships buried under the polar ice, engines frozen in silence but ready to ignite. When the cry arrived, secret alarms awakened across these hidden places. Pilots who had never seen real space stepped into training chambers. Engineers unlocked weapons sealed for centuries. Old captains placed their hands on command chairs they had thought they might never sit in again. The entire hidden machine of Earth began to move, slow but unstoppable. The choice was clear: Earth would respond. But the response had to be measured. Sending the entire fleet would expose too much, too fast. The galaxy was not ready to see the full face of humanity's return. Instead, a single ship would go, chosen from the fleet not because it was the most powerful, but because it carried the weight of history. The Vigilant was her name. She was a warship built 300 years ago, during the last Great War. When the silence began, She had been rebuilt in secret, upgraded piece by piece with weapons and systems the galaxy had never seen. Her hull was coated in black alloy that absorbed light. Her engines could move without leaving a trail. She was a shadow, built for a time when shadows ruled the galaxy. Now she would be the first to leave Earth's hiding place. As her crew prepared, whispers spread through the underground halls. "The silence is ending," they said. "The storm is waking." But behind the decision lay deeper fear. The cry had not said who the attackers were. The voice spoke of burning skies and falling worlds, but no names. Yet the commanders remembered. They remembered the enemy who had once pushed humanity to the edge. The Drawl. A race that lived only for conquest, ancient and merciless. If they were the ones behind the attack, then the silence could not continue. Humanity could not hide while the galaxy burned again. Some commanders prayed it was another enemy, a smaller one. But in their hearts they knew. The Drawl had waited, just as humanity had waited. Perhaps both had been preparing. And now the time had come. The order was given. The Vigilant rose from her hidden dock, engines humming like a predator stirring from sleep. Her black hull glided through the shadows of the underground hangar before lifting into the night sky. On the surface, no one saw her. She was invisible to the world that slept above. But in the hidden halls, thousands watched on screens as the first human warship in centuries broke free of Earth's silence. Some wept. Others saluted. All of them felt the weight of history. Humanity was stepping back into the galaxy. Not as victims. Not as exiles. But as a power the stars had forgotten. Far away, on Valari Prime, the desperate survivors still sent their cry, hoping anyone would hear. They had no idea that Earth had heard. They had no idea what their message had awakened. Soon, they would see. And soon, the galaxy would remember. The silence had been a choice. And that choice was ending. The cry that reached Earth spread faster than any secret before. From the hidden stations near Neptune to the warship docks under the oceans, everyone who carried the burden of silence now knew. But the true decision was not in the hands of soldiers or engineers. It rested with the High Council, the ruling body of humanity's shadow empire. The council gathered in a chamber so deep beneath the Andes that no satellite could ever find it. The room was shaped like a circle, carved from black stone, lit by pale blue light. Around the great table sat 12 figures, leaders who had guarded Earth's secret for centuries. Some were ancient veterans awakened from cryo-sleep, their eyes cold with memory. Others were descendants of commanders who had sworn oaths to protect humanity's hidden strength. For hours, the cry echoed through the chamber. "Help us, they are here, they are burning everything. Anyone, please respond." The voice of Valari Prime filled the silence until one of the counselors finally spoke. Admiral Kalen, his hair white as frost but his voice sharp, leaned forward. "If we respond, the galaxy will know we are alive. The silence ends, and with it the safety we built." His words carried the weight of centuries, for he had fought in the last wars against alien empires long before Earth vanished. Across the table, General Eris, younger but fierce, struck the table with her fist. "What safety?" she demanded. "We built the fleets not to hide forever but to return stronger. That cry is the reason we prepared. If we do nothing, then we are not guardians, we are cowards." Her words hung heavy, dividing the chamber. Some voices supported Kalen. They argued that the galaxy was not ready for humanity's return. Too many feared them. Old enemies might rise the moment Earth revealed itself. The silence had kept Earth alive, untouched, while others destroyed one another. Why risk that now? But others agreed with Eris. They reminded the council that humanity had always answered calls for help. It was not in their nature to ignore the suffering of others. To turn away now would make the silence meaningless. Humanity had survived, yes, but survival without honor was empty. The debate grew sharper. One counselor, Lord Harrell, a descendant of the first commanders, raised his hand for silence. His voice was calm but steady. We do not even know who the enemy is. The cry gave no name. Perhaps it is raiders, perhaps something greater. Should we gamble our existence on an unknown? At that, a shadow passed over the council. For though the message did not name the attackers, many of them already feared the truth. They feared the drawl. The memory of that ancient race still haunted every commander. The drawl had been the only enemy strong enough to force humanity into silence. They were merciless, unstoppable, a swarm that consumed worlds. If the drawl had returned, then the silence was already doomed. Admiral Kalen's face darkened. If it is the drawl, then we cannot fight them. Not yet. Not with one fleet, not even with 10. General Eris rose from her seat, her eyes burning. We do not have the luxury of waiting. The drawl will not stop at Valari Prime. They never stop. They will come for every world, and they will come for Earth. If we wait until they reach us, we will have lost everything. Better to strike first, before they know what we are. The council split. Half the members argued for silence, half for action. Voices rose, echoing against the black stone, until the chamber shook with tension. At last, the High Chancellor, a woman named Saran, raised her staff. The chamber fell silent. She had spoken little during the debate, but her word carried more weight than any other. Her eyes, dark and steady, swept across the circle. You argue as if silence is safety. But silence is only a weapon if we choose when to break it. The cry has forced our hand. The galaxy will learn the truth sooner or later. Better they learn it by our choice, not by our destruction. She turned to Admiral Kalen. We will not reveal everything. Not yet. But we will answer. One ship will go. One ship will test the galaxy's reaction. One ship will show that humanity is not gone. The decision settled over the chamber like thunder. Some sighed with relief, others with frustration, but none dared oppose the Chancellor. The Vigilant was chosen. She would carry the first response. Her crew would be the first humans to step into open space in centuries. The Council agreed to watch closely. If the galaxy trembled at the sight of one ship, then the fleet would remain hidden. If the cry proved the drawl had returned, then silence would be useless. The fleets would awaken, and the deadliest warforce in history would rise. After the decision, the councillors filed out in silence, but their hearts were heavy. The chamber echoed with the weight of what had been set in motion. Humanity had lived in the shadows for so long that even the commanders feared the light. And yet, beyond fear, there was something else stirring. Hope. Hope that humanity could return not as hunted prey, but as defenders, as leaders. Hope that this time the silence would end not in blood, but in fire strong enough to protect the galaxy. In the hidden docks, the crew of the Vigilant prepared. Young men and women, trained all their lives for a mission they thought might never come, now stood ready. Their eyes were nervous, their hands steady. They did not know what enemy awaited them. They did not know if they would return. But they knew one thing, they carried the voice of Earth with them. The debate of the Council had given them a mission. And with that mission, they would step into history. Far away, Valari Prime burned. The survivors sent their cry into the void, unaware that their message had touched the heart of a hidden empire. They did not know that Earth was stirring, that the silence of centuries was breaking. But soon, they would learn. The galaxy would learn. For the Council had chosen. The answer had been given. Humanity would return. The Vigilant slipped into the void like a shadow breaking free from chains. Her hull, blacker than the night, reflected no light and left no trail. For centuries she had slept under the oceans of Earth, hidden away while the world above lived in ignorance. Now her engines hummed with power as she crossed the dark edge of the solar system. Inside, her crew sat in silence, each one feeling the weight of history. They were the first humans to step openly into the galaxy after 300 years. Every movement, every word, would carry meaning far beyond themselves. Commander Joran stood at the bridge, his hands clasped behind his back. He was not old, but his eyes carried the hardness of someone who had trained his entire life for a single moment. Before them stretched the endless sea of stars, silent witnesses to humanity's return. The cry from Valari Prime guided them, a beacon of desperation pulling them into the unknown. As the ship accelerated, the crew whispered among themselves. Some were afraid. Others were burning with excitement. A few could barely believe this was real. They had grown up in the deep halls of Earth's hidden academies, taught that humanity had vanished, taught that the silence was everything. Now they were breaking that silence with every second of their journey. The galaxy had not yet noticed them. No sensor detected the Vigilant as she slipped past asteroid fields and dead satellites. She was built for secrecy, built for the kind of war no one expected. Her weapons lay quiet, but the crew knew their power. Pulse cannons that could cut through enemy shields, missiles that could split a capital ship in half, stealth systems that made her invisible to all but the closest eyes. She was a ghost, but a ghost with claws. And she carried a message, humanity's first answer. Commander Joran walked across the bridge and looked at his crew. "Remember," he said softly, "we are not here for glory. We are here to see the truth. To learn who is burning Valari Prime. If we can help, we help. If it is too great, we return. But no matter what, we carry Earth's voice. Do not forget who you are." His words settled over the crew like steel. They nodded in silence, their eyes steady now. The fear did not leave, but it changed. It became purpose. As days passed in the dark journey, the cry from Valari Prime grew weaker, fading into fragments. Sometimes it was only static, sometimes only broken screams. The crew listened each time, their jaws clenched, their hearts heavy. They knew the world might already be gone by the time they arrived. Yet still they pushed forward. It was not just about Valari Prime anymore. It was about the galaxy itself. Was the old enemy back? Was the silence about to be shattered not by choice, but by war? In the council chamber back on Earth, the leaders watched the Vigilant's progress. Every move was tracked, every signal monitored. They had sent one ship, but in truth it carried all of Earth's hopes. If the galaxy saw the Vigilant, it would know humanity had returned. If the galaxy feared it, then silence would end in terror. The council did not speak these thoughts aloud, but they all knew them. At last, the stars shifted, and Valari Prime came into view. What the crew saw through the screens froze their blood. The world was burning. Cities smoldered, oceans glowed with fire, and vast craters split the land. Above the planet hung enemy ships, black, spiked, monstrous. They moved like predators circling prey. The crew had no doubt who they were. The Drawl. The name was whispered across the bridge, filling the air with dread. Stories of the Drawl had been told in the academies, warnings of what had driven Earth into hiding. They were worse than the stories. Their ships radiated hunger and cruelty, their weapons carved into the flesh of the planet without mercy. Valari Prime was dying, and the Drawl were feasting on its death. Commander Joran's jaw tightened. His orders were clear. They were not here to start a war, not yet. But could he stand by while an entire world burned? He looked at the faces of his crew. They were waiting, watching him, their eyes torn between fear and hope. He thought of Earth, silent and hidden for centuries, safe but ashamed. He thought of the cry, the voice of a child in the background, begging through the static. And he made his choice. "We intervene," he said. The bridge fell silent, then erupted into motion. The Vigilant's weapons came alive, systems warming like sleeping beasts. Engines flared, shields locked, and for the first time in centuries, a human warship prepared to strike. The Drawl did not see them coming. The Vigilant slid through the dark like a blade in shadow. Her first shot tore across the void, slamming into the nearest Drawl frigate. The enemy ship exploded in a silent flash, its wreckage spinning into the burning sky of Valari Prime. The rest of the Drawl fleet turned, their sensors suddenly alive, but the Vigilant was already moving. Her black hull twisted through enemy fire, invisible until the moment she struck again. Missiles cut through another Drawl ship, Pulse cannons burned holes through armor that had once seemed unbreakable. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy witnessed the wrath of humanity. On the surface of Valari Prime, survivors looked up from their ruined cities. They saw the black shape of the Vigilant darting through the stars, striking the invaders with fury. Whispers spread among them. The humans are here." The words carried hope, a fragile light in the darkest night. They did not know how many ships had come, only that someone had answered. Humanity had answered. The battle raged for hours. The Vigilant was only one ship, but she fought like an army. For every enemy she destroyed, 2 more appeared, yet she did not fall. Her shields cracked, her hull scarred, but her spirit blazed. The crew fought without fear now. They knew they were making history. Even if they died, the galaxy would know Earth still lived. At last, with her weapons drained and her engines burning hot, the Vigilant pulled away. She could not destroy the entire fleet, but she had done enough. She had saved colonies on the surface, broken the Drall's sense of invincibility, and sent a message louder than any cry. Humanity had returned. As the Vigilant vanished into the shadows of space, the Drall ships regrouped, their fury growing. They would not forget this day. Neither would Valari Prime. The survivors sent a new message into the stars, not of fear but of hope. The humans are back. The humans fight again. Back on Earth, the Council received the report. Some faces turned pale at the sight of the Drall. Others straightened with grim determination. The choice was no longer theirs to delay. Silence was over. The Drall had returned. And humanity's deadliest war fleet would soon rise. The night on Earth was calm, but far beyond the skies something strange happened. A faint cry moved across the endless void, not a human voice but a message carried on old frequencies. It was broken, filled with static, but behind the distortion there was fear. Somewhere in the galaxy, someone was begging for help. The cry passed drifting stars, silent planets, and abandoned stations until it reached Earth's deep space receivers. Hidden in black orbit, old machines that no one believed were still active suddenly woke. Lights flickered. Silent alarms rang in secret chambers buried under mountains. Earth had been silent for centuries, but now the silence was broken. At first, only the machines listened. They translated the alien voice, repeating the same desperate words. "Help us! They are here! They are burning everything! Anyone, please respond!" The words were faint, repeated again and again like the last breath of a dying world. For decades, the galaxy had believed humanity was gone. No human ships, no colonies, no trade, no voice. Many thought Earth had been destroyed in forgotten wars. But the cry touched something deep, something that had been waiting. Humanity had not been destroyed. Humanity had been preparing. In a secure bunker beneath the Andes Mountains, a long dormant chamber lit up. Holograms came alive on walls of steel. Old commanders, frozen in cryo-sleep, stirred as their chambers hissed open. Men and women who had last seen the stars 300 years ago opened their eyes. Their first sight was not sunlight, not Earth, but the signal repeating over and over. One commander leaned forward, his voice heavy with age but sharp with memory. "The galaxy calls again," he whispered. "And it does not know we are listening." On the surface, the world looked quiet. Nations lived simple lives. Technology was controlled, skies peaceful, oceans calm. The people believed war had ended forever. But deep beneath, Earth's true face was hidden. Vast hangars stretched for miles underground, filled with ships that no one above had ever seen. Engines older than nations slept, waiting for orders. The cry had reached not just machines but the heart of Earth's secret. Humanity had chosen silence centuries ago, after wars that shook the stars. But silence was never weakness. It was a waiting blade, hidden in the dark. The message repeated again, sharper this time. A colony called Valari Prime was under attack. The attackers were not named, but the fear in the voice carried a weight. Children screamed in the background, buildings fell, skies burned. The humans who listened felt something stir inside them. They remembered old alliances, old wars, old debts. They remembered why humanity once ruled the stars. But more than memory, it was instinct. Humanity had always answered cries, even when the cost was great. The signal was a test, and Earth could not ignore it. The Council of Commanders met in the dark hall, their faces lit by the pale blue glow of the hologram. They were relics of a forgotten age, soldiers who had fought the first wars against powers that no longer even existed. They looked at one another, silent, until one of them finally spoke. If we answer, the galaxy will know we are alive. The hiding will end. Another voice rose, sharp as steel. And if we do not, then why did we keep the fleet? Why did we survive at all? The hall fell silent again. Every commander understood the weight of the choice. Outside, Earth rotated under its calm skies, unaware. Children laughed in playgrounds, families cooked dinners, farmers worked their fields. None of them knew that above their heads, in the black beyond the clouds, the galaxy was waiting. The cry had reached Earth, but soon Earth's answer would reach the galaxy. And no one was ready for what that answer would be. At the far edge of the solar system, in the shadows of Neptune, a station blinked awake. It had been dark for centuries, its crew frozen in deep sleep. Now its systems burned with life. The cry was forwarded there, translated again, and sent deeper, into channels only humans had built. It reached the shipyards hidden in the asteroid belt. It reached the listening posts carved into moons. One by one, the pieces of silence broke, and one by one, humanity's hidden machines stirred. The dead world was alive again. In the command chamber, the commanders made their decision. They would not send the full fleet. Not yet. To reveal everything at once would be madness. But one ship, yes, one ship could go. A single shadow in the dark, to test the galaxy, to see who watched. They chose the Vigilant, an old warship refitted in secret, her hull blacker than space, her engines silent until needed. She had slept too long, but her weapons still waited. The order was given. The crew was awakened. For the first time in centuries, a human ship prepared to leave Earth's hidden veil. As the Vigilant rose from the dark hangar, the Earth above remained calm, innocent. But deep inside, something ancient and dangerous was moving. The cry had not just reached Earth. It had touched the old wound, the one that never healed. Humanity remembered why it had disappeared. It remembered the enemy that once pushed it to the edge of extinction. If the cry was real, if the attackers were who they feared, then silence had lasted too long. The ship's engines burned without light, a ripple across the void. The crew sat at their stations, their faces pale but determined. Many of them had never seen real space. They had been born underground, trained in simulators, raised for a war that might never come. Now it had come. As the ship left the shadow of Earth, the commander whispered words that would never be recorded. "We are the answer. We are the storm." And far across the galaxy, on Valari Prime, the people who had sent the cry felt their world break around them. Their last message carried through fire and blood, unaware of who would hear it. They did not know that Earth still lived. They did not know what they had awakened. But soon, they would learn. Everyone would learn. The cry had reached Earth. And Earth had answered. The Drawl did not forget. When the Vigilant struck and vanished back into the dark, the enemy fleet did not see it as a single battle lost. They saw it as a challenge, a reminder of the one race they had once hated more than all others. In the silence of their war council, the Drawl leaders gathered. Their forms were tall and twisted, their eyes burning like molten fire. They spoke in a language that hissed like knives, and their words carried fury. One human ship had destroyed what should have been invincible. One human ship had reminded them of the wars long past. For centuries the Drawl had believed Earth was gone, its people destroyed or scattered, their fleets broken. The humans had vanished so completely that even the most skilled hunters of the Drawl could not find them. Now, that single black ship told a different story. Earth had not died. Earth had been hiding, waiting, and preparing. The Drawl felt the truth like poison in their veins. Their ancient enemy lived, and worse, their enemy was ready to fight again. On Valari Prime, the survivors who had seen the Vigilance intervention spread the word as if it were fire. Across broken streets, inside underground shelters, and over weak communication lines, whispers grew into cries of hope. The humans have returned. The humans fight for us. Many had never even seen a human before, only heard tales from old records. But what they witnessed in the skies proved the stories were true. Humanity was not weak, not broken, not lost. They were warriors, defenders, and their weapons were stronger than anything the galaxy remembered. Even as Valari Prime burned, that single act of defiance gave its people strength to resist a little longer. But hope was a dangerous thing, and the Drawl knew it. They had seen hope spread before, and they understood its cost. If word of humanity's return reached too far, it could unite worlds against them. And so, they vowed to crush it quickly. Back on Earth, the High Council reviewed the Vigilance recordings with grim faces. The images of Drawl warships filled the chamber, massive dark vessels shaped like claws. Their weapons tore through cities, their fire split oceans, their presence alone seemed to rot the sky. Some counselors paled at the sight, remembering old battles where millions had died. Others clenched their fists, their eyes cold with rage. The truth could not be denied. The enemy that had forced Earth into silence had returned. The Drawl were alive, and they were stronger than before. Chancellor Saran's voice echoed across the chamber. We can no longer pretend. The silence is broken. The galaxy will soon know we are alive, and the Drawl will come for us. The question is not if we fight, but how we fight. The debate shifted from whether to respond to how much to reveal. Some argued to send the entire fleet at once, to unleash the full power of Earth and end the Drawl before they spread. Others warned against it. The galaxy had feared humanity before. If they revealed all their strength, other empires might unite not with humans but against them. Humanity needed allies, and allies needed time to trust. A measured strike, some suggested, would show power without exposing the full arsenal. But time was short. Valari Prime was not the only world under attack. Reports trickled in, carried by desperate refugees and broken signals. Entire colonies had gone silent, planets burned, stations stripped of life. The Drawl were not just raiding. They were moving in force, as if the galaxy itself was their harvest. In the hidden shipyards under the polar ice, preparations began. Warships that had slept for centuries roared to life. Engineers checked engines, loaded weapons, and awakened crews from deep stasis. Black armored soldiers drilled in silence, their faces calm, their movements sharp. The deadliest war fleet, hidden for generations, was no longer a secret whispered in shadows. It was real, it was alive, and it was almost ready. But even as humanity armed itself, the galaxy was already trembling. News of the Vigilance stand spread faster than light, carried by survivors, smugglers, and spies. On distant worlds, old beings stirred uneasily. Some remembered fighting beside humans long ago. Others remembered fighting against them. Now all of them faced the same truth: Earth was back, and Earth was dangerous. Among the Drawl, a new hunger rose. Their leaders declared that humanity must be destroyed completely this time. Not scattered, not hidden, but burned from existence. They began gathering fleets, calling warriors from every corner of their empire. Worlds under their rule trembled as entire populations were forced into service. Massive shipyards glowed with fire as new warships were forged. The Drawl did not just want victory. They wanted vengeance. For the shame of being defied by one ship, they wanted to drown Earth in blood. They remembered the wars of the past, and they swore that this time they would not stop until every trace of humanity was erased. Meanwhile, the crew of the Vigilant returned to Earth's hidden docks. Their ship was scarred, their shields shattered, but their spirits were unbroken. They had faced the Drawl and survived. When they stepped out of their ship, thousands of silent soldiers saluted them. They were the first heroes of the New Age, proof that the silence had meaning, proof that humanity was ready. Commander Joran stood before the council, his voice steady though his body carried exhaustion. The Drawl are back. Valari Prime still burns. If we wait, we will lose the galaxy before we even step into it. His words shook the chamber, but none could deny them. Humanity's choice was no longer about hiding or revealing. It was about survival. As the council adjourned, the galaxy shifted. In the shadows, old enemies watched and waited. Some feared the return of humans, others plotted how to use them. But far above, beyond the reach of spies, the Drawl fleets gathered like a storm. The enemy had awakened, and their eyes were fixed on Earth. They would come, and they would come soon. The silence of centuries was gone, replaced by the thunder of war drums echoing across the stars. Humanity had answered a cry for help, and in doing so had awakened the very monster it once sought to escape. The galaxy would soon burn again, and this time, the fire would be greater than ever before. Deep beneath the frozen mountains of Earth lay vaults untouched for centuries. Few outside the High Council knew they existed, and fewer still had ever walked their halls. The vaults were not filled with gold or treasure but with history, sealed away for a time when silence would end. Now that the Drawl had awakened, the council sent Commander Joran and a select group of officers to those halls. What they found was not only weapons but memories, records of the First Great War, when humanity had nearly been destroyed. The air inside the vaults was cold and heavy with dust, but the machines lining the walls hummed faintly as if waiting for their keepers to return. With a command from the archivist, the ancient systems flickered to life. Holograms filled the chamber, showing battles fought long ago. Cities burning under Drawl fire, fleets shattered in orbit, billions of voices crying out before silence consumed them. The officers watched in silence, their faces pale. They had heard of the old wars, but seeing them made the stories real. Humanity had suffered more than words could describe, and only through cunning and sacrifice had they survived. It was no wonder Earth had vanished into silence. They had not fled out of weakness, they had hidden to rebuild, to prepare for a future war they always knew would come. Among the holograms appeared one figure that caught Joran's eye. A woman with dark eyes, wearing the uniform of an admiral, stood before a burning map of the galaxy. Her voice carried across the vault even though she had died centuries ago. If you are seeing this, then the Drawl have returned. Know this truth, our silence is not cowardice. It is our shield. We gave up the stars so that our children could inherit them again. If you stand here now, then you are those children. Do not waste the gift we gave you. Do not fear the shadows of the past. Face them, and finish what we could not. The officers listened in awe. Her name appeared on the display, Admiral Kalen Rin, last commander of the First War Fleet. She had died in battle when Earth vanished, yet her voice still guided them now. Joran felt a weight settle on his shoulders. The Admiral's words were not just for him but for all humanity. They were heirs to a war left unfinished. The archivist led them deeper, past doors sealed with codes older than anyone alive. Inside rested weapons humanity had sworn never to use again. Giant cannons designed to pierce entire moons, warheads that could burn atmospheres, machines that could blind fleets across light years. Some officers trembled at the sight, for these were not weapons of defense but of destruction. Joran stared at them with a heavy heart. They would need every tool, every advantage, because the Drawl would not show mercy. Yet he wondered if by using such weapons, humanity would become the very monster it feared. Still, the past whispered to him that survival demanded sacrifice. If they did not fight with everything they had, there would be no future to protect. Back in the council chambers, arguments raged. Some wanted the old weapons unleashed immediately. The Drawl will show no restraint, one counselor shouted. If we hold back, we invite our own death. Others resisted, warning that to use such power would mark humanity as a terror once more. The galaxy already fears us, a voice argued. If we reveal ourselves as destroyers, no one will ever stand beside us. The debate grew so fierce that even the Chancellor struggled to keep order. In the end, they made a choice. Humanity would awaken the fleet, but the deadliest weapons of the past would remain sealed, unless the Drawl forced their hand. It was a fragile compromise, one that left no one satisfied but everyone bound. Meanwhile, the galaxy stirred with unease. Worlds under Drawl control whispered of rebellion. Smugglers carried news of human warships moving again. Some believed it, others laughed, but all felt the shift in the stars. Old powers debated their next steps. The Valari, though broken, began sending secret envoys, desperate for an alliance. They had seen humanity fight, and they clung to the hope that humans might save them. Yet not all who heard the news felt hope. On distant thrones, alien rulers remembered the wars of the past. They remembered human fleets that scorched the void with fire and steel. If Earth was back, then so was danger. Some plotted quietly to join with the Drawl, believing it safer to crush humanity before it grew too strong. Among the Drawl, the awakening of old enemies only fueled their rage. Their leaders saw the whispers of rebellion, the flickers of hope, and they blamed it all on humanity. "The shadow returns," one of their warlords hissed. "It must be burned away." They increased their attacks, targeting not only Valari worlds but any system that might aid the humans. Planets that had never even heard of Earth were reduced to ashes, their people slaughtered, their skies filled with the dark wings of Drawl ships. They sought to create fear so powerful that no world would dare to believe in humanity's return. But fear and hope are strange twins. For every planet crushed, another whispered, "The humans will come." On Earth, Joran prepared his crew for what lay ahead. The Vigilant had been repaired, stronger than before, and it was no longer alone. Dozens of ships now stood ready, their black hulls glinting under the ice. As he walked through the dock, Joran felt the weight of Admiral Rin's words again. This was not only a fight for survival. It was a fight to finish the war of the past, to close the shadow once and for all. Yet deep inside, he feared what it would cost. Humanity had been forged in silence, tempered in patience, but war was a fire that consumed everything it touched. Would they rise as saviors, or would they become the very terror the galaxy feared? That night, Joran stood before his crew, men and women who had trained for this moment all their lives. His voice was steady, carrying through the steel halls. "The shadows of the past are here. The Drawl think we are weak. They think we are afraid. But we are children of Earth. We are the silence that waited. We are the fire that returns. We will not hide anymore. We will fight, and we will not stop until the shadows are gone." His words filled the chamber, and for a moment, silence followed. Then the soldiers roared as one, their voices echoing like thunder. The past was no longer a ghost. It was alive in their blood. And soon, the galaxy would see it burn again. The galaxy was no longer quiet. Every whisper, every rumor, every broken transmission carried one message: the humans had returned. Some called it hope, others called it a curse, but no one could ignore it. Across distant worlds, small sparks of resistance began to rise. On Valari Prime, survivors who had once hidden now carried weapons, their eyes burning with courage they thought lost forever. On mining colonies enslaved by the Drawl, workers carved secret symbols into walls, the ancient mark of humanity that meant freedom. But the Drawl were not blind. Their fleets moved like storms, striking at any world where whispers grew too loud. For every flicker of rebellion, fire and ash followed. Still, the whispers did not die. Instead, they spread faster, carried by smugglers, traders, and fugitives who risked their lives to pass the words, "Earth is alive." On Earth itself, the shipyards thundered with life. The silence of centuries had ended, and the deadliest war fleet was waking. Massive warships rose from under ice and oceans, their black hulls glowing with blue fire as their engines roared for the first time in generations. Soldiers trained day and night, their bodies and minds sharpened for the storm to come. Yet the Council knew war was not only about weapons. If humanity revealed its full strength too quickly, it might unite the galaxy against them instead of with them. They needed allies, voices to speak of humans not as monsters but as saviors. For that, they turned to Commander Joran and the Vigilant. His ship had been the first to fight, the first to show the galaxy that Earth still lived. Now, he and his crew would carry a new mission, to gather the storm not only of weapons but of hearts. The Vigilant launched again, stronger than before. Alongside it flew 3 new ships, sleek and deadly, their names chosen from old legends, the Valiant, the Revenant, and the Sentinel. Together they formed a small fleet, not to strike but to show the galaxy that Earth stood ready. Their first destination was Valari Prime, the world that had first cried for help. As the ships entered orbit, cheers rose from the burning cities below. For the first time in years, the people saw not only destruction in their skies but protection. Supplies and weapons were dropped to the resistance, and teams of human soldiers landed to train them. Hope became more than whispers, it became action. Yet Joran knew the Drawl would not ignore this. By saving Valari Prime, humanity had painted a target on its chest. The storm was gathering, and the enemy was already moving. Far across the void, the Drawl convened in their great citadel, a fortress carved into the heart of a dead star. Their warlords raged as reports of human sightings grew. Some demanded an immediate strike on Earth itself, to burn the homeworld before the humans spread further. Others counseled patience, warning that Earth's silence might have hidden more strength than they knew. But the High Overlord silenced them all. His voice was deep and cruel, his body armored with living metal. "The humans believe they can rise again," he hissed. "Then we will rise higher. We will gather every fleet, every weapon, every slave soldier. When the storm comes, it will not break upon us. It will break upon them." At his command, thousands of ships began to converge, drawn from across the Drawl Empire. The greatest armada in their history was forming, and its path was already set, toward Earth. Meanwhile, other powers in the galaxy watched with fear. The Zalari merchants debated whether to trade with the humans or betray them to the Drawl. The Valen priest kings saw visions of fire and doubted whether humanity was savior or destroyer. Even the neutral systems, who had avoided war for centuries, now faced a choice. If they sided with the humans, they risked the Drawl's wrath. If they sided with the Drawl, they might one day kneel before Earth's fire. None could remain untouched. The storm was not only of ships and weapons but of decisions, of loyalties, of futures uncertain. On the Vigilant, Joran felt the weight of it all. He stood at the bridge, watching the stars, knowing every world they visited looked to him as proof that humanity was more than a ghost. But he also knew the Drawl were watching, hunting. Each victory risked drawing the enemy closer. And yet he could not stop. The storm was coming whether they wished it or not, and the only choice left was whether to be ready when it struck. His crew felt it too. They were no longer just soldiers of Earth, they were the face of Earth to the galaxy. Every word they spoke, every act they made carried the power to inspire or to destroy trust. The silence had ended, and with it came responsibility heavier than war itself. One night, as the fleet drifted between stars, Joran called his officers together. The room was dim, lit only by the soft glow of star maps. "The Drawl are moving," he said. "Their fleets grow each day. Soon they will come not for colonies but for us. We have one chance to gather allies before the storm breaks. If we fail, Earth will stand alone. And if Earth stands alone, Earth will fall." His words echoed through the chamber, heavy and true. None spoke, but in their eyes burned the same fire. They knew the risk. They knew the cost. Yet none would turn back. The silence had been long, but the storm would be longer still. As the fleet prepared for its next journey, a final message arrived from the council. It was short, but its meaning was clear. The storm is no longer coming. The storm is here. Be ready. And so humanity moved, its war fleet growing, its allies wavering, its enemies gathering. The stars themselves seemed to tremble as if waiting for the clash to come. The storm had been gathering for centuries, hidden in silence, forged in fire. Now it would break across the galaxy, and nothing would ever be the same again. The storm finally broke. For months, whispers had spread and fleets had moved in secret, but now there was no more hiding. Humanity's war fleet rose from Earth's hidden shipyards, black giants tearing through the ice, their engines roaring like thunder across the void. Dozens of ships formed into formation, their hulls glowing with the blue light of ancient power. At their head flew the Vigilant, proud and unbroken, carrying Commander Joran and his crew into destiny. Across the stars, the Draal Armada answered. Thousands of ships, dark and jagged, descended upon the Valari system where humanity had chosen to make its stand. Their numbers blotted out the light of the sun, and their weapons burned with crimson fire. The galaxy held its breath. For the first time in centuries, the humans and the Draal would clash again. On Valari Prime, people huddled in shelters, listening to the distant rumble of engines that shook the skies. Children clung to their mothers, elders whispered prayers, and soldiers loaded weapons with trembling hands. They had seen battles before, but nothing like this. This was not a raid, not a strike, but a war. In orbit above them, humanity's war fleet spread its wings, forming lines of fire and steel. Joran stood at the bridge of the Vigilant, his eyes locked on the endless swarm of enemy ships. Fear pressed at his heart, but beneath it burned something stronger, resolve. "All ships," he said calmly, his voice carried across the fleet. "The silence is over. Today, humanity speaks with fire." The first strike came swift and brutal. Draal cruisers surged forward, spitting lances of red energy that tore through space. Human ships answered with beams of blue fire, cutting across the void with surgical precision. Explosions lit the darkness as the two fleets collided, metal shattering, shields flaring, engines bursting into flame. The Vigilant weaved through the chaos, its cannons roaring, carving holes in the enemy lines. Around it, the Valiant and Sentinel moved like wolves, striking fast and retreating before the Draal could overwhelm them. But the enemy was endless, wave after wave crashing against humanity's wall. The void became a storm of death, and both sides bled ships into the fire. On the ground, Valari soldiers watched the sky as burning wreckage rained down. Some cheered when they saw enemy ships fall, others wept when human vessels followed. Yet even in their fear, they felt something new: hope. Humanity was not only fighting, it was holding. For every Draal ship that fell, the people below believed a little more that freedom was possible. And for the first time, the Draal felt something they had not expected: resistance. They had thought the humans weak, forgotten, lost. But here was proof that Earth had not only survived but grown sharper, stronger. Still, their numbers pressed hard, and the battle raged without mercy. Inside the Vigilant, alarms blared as enemy fire struck its shields again and again. The ship groaned, its crew moving with frantic precision, repairing, reloading, firing back. Commander Joran stood unshaken, his voice steady even as chaos erupted around him. "Target their carriers," he ordered. "Cut off their wings." The Vigilant's guns swiveled, unleashing a storm of fire upon the massive Draal carrier at the center of their line. The carrier's shields flickered, failed, and then with one final blast it exploded, sending shockwaves that scattered nearby ships. A cheer erupted across the human fleet. For a moment, it seemed possible. For a moment, the shadows of the past trembled. But the Draal were not broken. Their High Overlord had unleashed his greatest weapon, a warship so massive it dwarfed even humanity's largest vessels. It emerged from the swarm like a beast from nightmare, its hull black as void, its cannons glowing with crimson power. One blast from its guns tore through a human destroyer, splitting it in half. Another strike crippled a cruiser, sending it spinning into the planet's atmosphere. Joran stared at the monster ship, his jaw tight. "So," he whispered, "this is how they mean to end us." Yet fear did not take him. Instead, he felt the weight of Admiral Kalen Rin's words, spoken centuries ago. This was the storm they had prepared for. This was the fire they had been born into. "All ships," Joran commanded, "focus fire on that Titan. If it falls, the rest will break." His voice rang clear across the fleet, and humanity answered. Warships turned, weapons blazed, and the sky lit with blue fire. The Draal Titan roared back, its cannons tearing through lines of human ships, but still they pressed on. The Vigilant led the charge, diving through fire, its guns hammering at weak points in the enemy's armor. Explosions rippled across the Titan's hull, cracks spreading like fire across its dark skin. Still it fought, still it burned, but humanity refused to yield. The battle raged for hours, neither side willing to surrender. Ships collided, boarding parties clashed in blood and steel, and the void became a graveyard of wrecks. Yet through the chaos, one truth shone clear: the silence was truly over. The galaxy could no longer deny humanity's return. They had faced the Drawl not as victims but as equals, and the fire they carried spread across every watching world. At last, as the Titan shook under endless fire, its core overloaded. With a final scream, it exploded in a burst of crimson light that lit the entire system. The shockwave scattered the Drawl fleet, leaving them reeling. Humanity had struck a wound deep into their heart. But victory came with a price. Dozens of human ships were gone, thousands of soldiers lost. The Vigilant itself bore heavy scars, its hull torn, its crew bloodied. As silence fell over the battlefield, Joran stood at the bridge, staring at the wreckage. He knew this was only the beginning. The Drawl would not forget this blow. They would come again, stronger, angrier, determined to erase humanity once and for all. Yet for now, Earth had shown the galaxy that it was alive, that it would fight, and that it would never again be silent. Far below, on Valari Prime, the people lifted their eyes to the sky. Amid the burning wreckage, they saw human ships still standing, still guarding them. Tears fell, voices rose, and for the first time in generations, they believed freedom was possible. Humanity had returned, not as a whisper but as a storm, and the galaxy would never be the same. The battlefield drifted silent, broken ships floating like tombstones across the stars. Smoke and debris scattered endlessly, the remains of both human and Drawl vessels marking the place of their first true clash in centuries. Humanity had won a victory, but it was not the victory they had hoped for. Too many ships were gone, too many lives had been lost, and the enemy was not destroyed. The Drawl Titan lay in ruins, but the rest of their armada had retreated into the shadows, regrouping, waiting to strike again. On the Vigilance Bridge, Commander Joran stood among the wounded and weary. His crew moved like ghosts, eyes sunken, faces pale, but none had broken. They had fought the storm, and they had lived. Yet as Joran looked out into the void, he knew this was only the beginning. The silence of centuries had ended, but the price of that silence was now clear. They had been forgotten, underestimated, hidden away. Now, because of their return, the galaxy itself would burn. Back on Earth, the Council received the fleet's report. The chamber was heavy with grief as the names of the fallen were read aloud. Each name echoed through the hall like a wound that would not heal. Some counselors wept, others clenched their fists, but none could deny the truth: the Drawl were far stronger than they had hoped. The old silence had bought time, but it had not weakened the enemy enough. Now that Earth had revealed itself, there would be no going back. The Drawl would not stop until humanity was ash, and the galaxy would soon be caught between them. Chancellor Saran's voice was low but steady as she spoke. We chose silence to survive. We chose fire to return. Now we must choose sacrifice, for the storm will not end until one side is gone. Across the galaxy, reactions spread like wildfire. On Valari Prime, cheers still echoed in ruined streets. Survivors raised flags, sang songs, and swore to fight beside the humans. To them, Earth was no longer a myth but a savior, a protector who had bled for them. But elsewhere, the news carried fear. The Zalari trade guilds declared emergency councils, afraid that war would choke their routes. The Valen priest kings warned their people that the fire of humanity would scorch friend and foe alike. Even the neutral worlds whispered of danger, remembering ancient wars when humans had brought as much terror as hope. Allies were forming, but enemies were multiplying. The galaxy had been thrown into chaos, and all of it pointed back to Earth. Meanwhile, deep within Drawl territory, the High Overlord stood before his warlords. His armor glowed with veins of crimson, his eyes burning like stars. The defeat at Valari Prime had wounded his pride, but it had not broken him. Instead, it had lit his fury like never before. The humans dare defy us, he hissed, his voice echoing across the chamber. They rise from silence and think themselves gods. Then let us show them what gods truly are. At his command, the Drawl began building something greater than a fleet, greater than a titan. In secret forges hidden in black holes and dead suns, they forged weapons never seen before, weapons meant to end humanity in a single stroke. The Drawl had awakened fully, and their vengeance would be merciless. On the Vigilant, the crew repaired their ship, patching wounds with steel and hope. But even in the quiet moments, the shadows lingered. Officers spoke in whispers of the lives lost, of friends gone forever, of families that would never see them again. Joran carried it all in silence, but inside, the weight grew heavier with each passing hour. He remembered Admiral Kalen Rin's words, silence was their shield, fire was their gift. Yet he wondered if that gift was a curse. By ending the silence, had humanity doomed not only itself but the entire galaxy? Still, doubt could not break him. He knew the truth. The Drawl would have come one day, silence or not. At least now, humanity stood ready. One evening, as the Vigilant drifted in orbit above Valari Prime, Joran walked among the survivors. Children ran to him, their eyes wide with awe, calling him the man who had saved them. Old warriors clasped his hands, whispering thanks. But he felt no pride, only the weight of their trust. They did not see the scars on his soul, the nightmares that haunted him, the fear that the next battle would be worse. Yet their hope mattered more than his pain. It reminded him why humanity had broken its silence. Not for glory, not for power, but so that children like these could see another sunrise. In the hidden shipyards of Earth, more vessels awakened. The Deadliest warfleet was still incomplete, but its numbers grew with each passing day. Battleships older than empires lit their engines for the first time in centuries. Supercarriers, silent for generations, now thrummed with life. Humanity was preparing for the greater war, a war that would decide the fate of the galaxy. But they knew preparation alone would not be enough. They would need allies, worlds willing to fight beside them. And so the Vigilant's mission was not over. It would travel again, not only to strike but to speak, to show the galaxy that Earth was not a monster but a protector. As the final council session ended, Chancellor Saran turned to the fleet's leaders. Her eyes were hard, her voice unyielding. "The silence has ended," she said. "The Drawl will come for us. The galaxy will choose its side. And we must be ready to pay the price. If fire is our destiny, then let the galaxy burn with us, not in fear, but in freedom." Her words carried across the room, searing themselves into every heart. Humanity's path was no longer uncertain. It was war, total and unstoppable. In the darkness beyond, the Drawl gathered their forces. In the light of Earth, humanity armed itself. Between them lay the galaxy, trembling in anticipation. The silence had cost centuries, but it had bought survival. Now that silence was gone, replaced by fire, and the storm it unleashed would decide everything. The first clash had ended, but the war was only beginning. The price of silence had been paid in blood, and soon the galaxy would see if humanity's fire could finish what was started long ago.